Welcome back to another episode of Earthcast. This is Season 5, Farming for the Future. And I'm joined by Tom Murray and Rushdah Kannemeyer, who are from Woolworths. And I would love you to introduce yourselves and maybe speak a little bit about why you've been chosen to come and speak to me today. And today we're going to be discussing sustainable agriculture and farming in South Africa.
Rush, you want to go first?
Sure. I've been with Woolworths for 12 years now, working in produce. I think produce is where my heart is, actually. And what I do, so mainly responsible for food safety. I work across a number of complex to simpler suppliers where we process veg and salads into your beautiful dishes that you see in our stores, as well as our farmers on the veg and salad side of things that actually grow our produce for us. So, yeah.
It's quite a wide, similar for me. I work in the fruit, fresh juice and horticultural space. My area isn't necessarily as complex as the area that Rushdah looks after, but also similar. We have a team of agronomists. I'm an entomologist by trade, so we are out on the farm, especially my team, they're out on the farm all the time, and working very, very closely with our growers to deliver the product that we put on shelf.
Brilliant. Tom, Rushdah, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited to get into these questions. And so we're going to be talking about Woolworths' Farming for the Future campaign a little bit more. And so Farming for the Future is a long-term initiative. Mm-hmm. Tom, I'm going to ask you this question. How has Woolworths' approach to sustainable farming evolved over time? And what impact are you seeing? I know impact's quite broad, but...
Yeah, interesting question, because the nice thing about Farming for the Future, and I don't think we've ever quite sold it as such, but we should. Farming for the Future is an assessment. It's not an audit. So it's not the static audit that you get every year. This must be done. This box must be ticked. This must be ticked. There are certain things in there, yes, that we have expectations of. But as we learn more and understand more and evolve in our thinking, Farming for the Future evolves with it. It's not a static assessment, which is absolutely fantastic. So if you have a look at our integrated pest management section now, you're going to see it's been fairly small. Now all of a sudden that's going to scale up, and you're going to see a lot more input and emphasis on that section of Farming for the Future. How we control pests, getting our farmers to think about biologicals, other alternatives, and assessing them on that. And the nice thing about doing an assessment is they can see, all right, I'm here at this point in time. I might have scored, say, a 4, but I should be scoring an 8. And it gives them the opportunity to work towards, all right, how do I do better in this next year? So it's a live document, and it's always evolving, which is fantastic. If we had left it as it was back in 2010, we would be completely behind, because agriculture moves fast. We are not in a static industry. It is evolving all the time, and a great place to be.
I had the privilege of going to one of your supplier farms, LVG plant, and was introduced to some incredible biopest control measures and water reduction and solar plants. It was really, really impressive to go see that. I'm often curious to know how you deal with the complexity of trade-offs and sustainability. And so, Rushdah, I've got a question for you. At the moment, regarding your commitment to sustainability, what is your biggest challenge?
Gosh, we face so many challenges. And like Tom said, there isn't just one recipe that works for everybody. So we adapt and work with each one of our farmers with the challenge that faces them on the farm. So whether it is from their water usage efficiencies, or whether it is from a disease they're trying to manage that has mutated now because of climate change and all that comes with that, or getting their soil just healthier. We work with them closely, specifically on their need, and we have to think outside of the box. We've got to be creative in our solutions, and it's got to be something that actually fits for what that farmer's going to input on his business.
A lot of people, when they think about sustainability and farming, it's a sort of big modern technological beast that they're thinking about. And we were discussing this earlier. And we're talking about how simple some of these measures are. Maybe you could mention some of the really simple measures that people are using to solve maybe, I don't know, that create big cost efficiencies.
I'll use the strawberry farmer example because I was with them last week. He's still planting in the ground, prepping the soil. They're doing the preparation now. The plants will be going in about the next 2-3 weeks. he then takes frost cover and places frost cover over those plants and kind of says goodbye to them until July, because obviously all the irrigation water is there, and they leave the plants completely under the frost cover, which is also insect cover. And as they come towards harvest, all they do is lift up the frost cover, harvest, put it back, and then probably in about October they'll take the cover off completely. But
that's just a physical barrier. It's a very simple measure.
It's a very simple physical barrier, and we've actually, the reason why we were there last week, besides to visit with them, is actually a development grower who we're working with. And I was on her farm giving her advice, and I saw her farm, and I thought, you need to chat to Dave, because your farming methodology, it could be increased completely by having Dave mentor you. So he is going to start mentoring her in March, and we're going to have the exact same methodology of her growing up in Joburg as has worked for the last, I don't know how many years with Dave. And it's amazing to be able to take the simple things that don't require huge input cost and extrapolate it to another farm. And that's the joy of what we do. We work with so many farmers, and you see an idea there and you think, ooh. And then you go to the next farm and they think you're clever, but meanwhile you've stolen it from the other farm.
Oh, absolutely. The borrowing and the sharing.
Borrowing, yes. Yeah.
I prefer to call it information sharing.
There you go.
But absolutely, there's a little bit of that.
And then there's other technologies that we're playing with at the moment. Rushdah is probably sick and tired of hearing this now. LED lights. We've got a big project on LED lights and how do we use them in pest control. Especially in the Lepidoptera side of things, your Lepidoptera are generally trichromatic, so they can see color.
You're talking about butterflies and moths here.
Yes, butterflies and moths. Sorry, butterflies and moths, yes. But the ones that we have a bit of a problem with. And, so we've had a look at the literature to understand which are the favored wavelengths. And we've now got one trap that is outside of the glass house, the greenhouse, which we're going to have to put inside soon. And we realized that the wavelengths that we've set it up with specifically also attract other pest species. And we were only aiming for one, which is tutor. It's a tomato pest, but we discovered that other pest species also like the wavelength that we put in front of it. And we've got 2 water tank traps that are being manufactured at the moment. So in effect, what you do, it's about the size of this. It's water, bit of soap, and you have the light in the middle with all the sexy colors that the moth likes.
Their favorite wavelengths.
Yes, and you have that shining at night at the specific time when that moth flies and it comes and it does a bit of a whirl and drowns itself. So that's the idea. And is it expensive at the moment? Yes, because we are trying to see if this technology will work. But once you scale it, it becomes very, very affordable, especially when you think that if you can take out the cost of pesticides, applying pesticides, and just use light as one of your mechanisms of control, it's quite amazing. And the idea with this...
And that's something you now don't have to buy in. You do have to pay for cost of electricity, but probably significantly reduced to importing...
Yeah. No, it is. And with this pan light, what we're aiming to do, because we can get quite a distance out, we have quite a high lux, we can take it to 200 lux. So you, in effect, can geofence a farm. You can put this imaginary field, and if you have 4 of those around the farm, you now have a light barrier that is attracting the pest.
Keeping them on the outside.
And saying, come and party here, but drown. And so you've got quite expensive tech like that we're playing with, and then the simple stuff that we're doing as well. Yeah.
I never tired of hearing Tom talk about the disco moths and how we attract
disco moths. I love that.
I've got a presentation I can take you through if you want. Yeah.
Another question for you, Tom. So if we look at some of the practices that are happening on your partner farms, like your disco moths and the water conservation efforts and solar panels and farms and things, what do you think is the greatest challenge in a South African commercial farming context for these innovations to be scaled? Again, this is something we were discussing earlier. We had lots of chats, and one of the other discussions is about the research sharing amongst farmers. So maybe, people talking.
I think for me, I am very, very open to chatting with any farmer, and we've got a Vision Zero that we aiming for 0 residues on product that we sell in our stores by 2035.
Residues as pesticides?
As in pesticide residues,
wow.
And we're pretty much there with fruit in the veg and salad space. We're working on that. But we went around the country and we initially said, all right, this is what Woolworths' vision is, and this is where we'd like to be. But then actually realized, open it up to everybody. And we had the entire biological industry. It's nice us as a retailer calling everybody together in the industry because we're independent. There's no agenda. So it isn't organized by the industry, but I don't like that person, so they can't come. We open it up to everybody. And
so inclusivity in your community.
You've got to be inclusive in what you do, because a lot of what we do to scale, it doesn't cost much. It's just getting the idea out there. And you mentioned solar panels, etc., and all that kind of stuff. There's obviously a lot of input costs involved nowadays with doing that kind of stuff. But switching a farmer from a dollar-based pesticide to a rand-based biological, be it mites or whatever it is a much easier conversation to have. And I think you would have seen at LVG when you visited them what they're doing. I think they're releasing mites, they're doing all the biologicals, and that's very easy to scale. And it's just getting the message out to the growers. And we did the road trips. We were down here, we were up in Nelspruit, up in Pretoria. We've got to go to Botswana next. And it's pretty amazing to be able to bring the industry together and say, guys, this is what we're looking for. Here's the people to chat to. Please have a chat, because this is our direction. With our Farming for the Future assessments, we are definitely driving that agenda of going the biological route and the more sustainable route if you can.
Wow, fascinating. Thank you for sharing. There's so many exciting things that are going on these farms, a lot of innovations. Rushdah, I'm curious to know if you could envision an ideal South Africa regarding farming in the next 20 years. What would that look like? What would that landscape be?
Gosh, ideally, we just want all our farmers to be profitable and successful. I visited farms where a farmer tells me about the high input costs, how he has just secured his farm and put up new fencing. And then overnight, he comes back and somebody slashed his fence and stolen his solar panels. And we understand that food hunger in our country and people that do desperate things. But if we can make sure that our farmers are profitable at the end of the day, can feed their workers, can put food on the table for their families, can make sure that the produce we're putting on shelves is affordable and accessible to everybody, not just the limited few. That, I think, would be ideal.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah. And Tom, if you could challenge or change one misconception about sustainable farming in South Africa, what would that be?
You'll get the common thing, it costs the earth to do, but not being sustainable costs the earth. I think everybody associates sustainability with a high input cost, and it kind of mirrors what Rushdah says there with regards to everybody, the farmers, whether they're small or large, they have to be profitable. And you can't be taking them down a route where they are unprofitable and it's not making sense and it's not making money for them. Everybody, when they say sustainability, they automatically think putting up, panels that are very expensive and all that kind of stuff. And for me, it's actually, no, get the small stuff right. Get the small stuff right from the start and spread the word. And we had the chat, if you get one of the key farmers involved in doing something and his neighbors see that he's doing it, all of a sudden it spreads out. And that's a great place to be, where you take a simple idea and get everybody to adapt and to evolve to it. And some of these ideas that we're having now with regards to, say, grazing, the interrow and all that kind of stuff will evolve as well. I don't know where it's going to evolve to, but I can tell you now there's going to be a farmer in a year's time who I'm going to see is going to say, oh, look what I'm doing now. And then you're going to be saying to all the other farmers, do this. And so the input into sustainability is minimal to excessive. And you as a grower have to decide how you're going to look at it and what approach you're going to take. The advice we were giving last week to the farmers is going to cost them absolutely nothing to launch and do, and working with cattle and orchards, it's going to cost them nothing. And yet the return they're going to get is quite substantial, because you've got a fodder there that's sitting that's only ever been mowed and also only ever had a herbicide used on it. And you're eliminating both of those steps.
And if I try and picture that, what I'm seeing is sort of rows of trees with a sort of what would have been a dead space before that's now being grazed on.
Yep.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. And it's very simple to implement. And so we are encouraging that. And We have quite a few farmers there already, and we're going to take more on the journey, and we're going to do workshops with the farmers. We'll have visits to the farmers who are successfully implementing it. And once the others see how it works, it's very easy to replicate. We mentioned, we've got a big composting drive, and there's amazing opportunity, particularly in the Western Cape, with all of the invasive species. They can become compost. And there's a lot of dairy farmers, so invasive species, fruit waste and dairy waste, you've got a very, very good product or very good base, to start making a compost. And that's also not that expensive to start. And once you get the hang of it and the recipe right, you can then, commit yourself to compost rather than going the synthetic route of synthetic fertilizers, et cetera. Yes, there'll always be a place for the synthetics. Your compost isn't always going to be 100% exactly what's needed, but at least you are eliminating a pest species and in the form of the trees, and also eliminating a lot of your input cost of fertilizers.
It's interesting. What I'm hearing is that in order for sustainability to be adopted, it needs to be sexier, it needs to be cheaper. And then on the positive, again, another positive is that most of these sustainable solutions, if you think about them just a little bit longer, you'll be able to find something that is usually cost effective as well. Yeah. So much easier to sell. Rushdah, I want to move slightly. I wanted to chat to you a bit more about the retail side of the world. Looking ahead, how do you envision the role of South African retailers in shaping a more sustainable future that is beyond just sustainable sourcing? Because, obviously knowing your value chain is important.
Sure. Woolworths is just one retailer as well. And we're striving to drive our Farming for the Future program, our regenerative method of farming. And we're hoping that in doing that, we're leading the way. We are striving for progress. As much as, we know that we're on a journey, any small steps, as long as it's going forward, is what we're trying to achieve with our farmers. Like Tom said, it's not an audit, it's an assessment. So trying to improve that little bit on what you did last year when you have your assessment this year and how you've progressed and made your farm a better practice. And leading that way and being those leaders to the other retailers in South Africa is what we're hoping to be able to achieve.
The best way to lead is by example. Thank you. And before I get on to my last question for you, Rushdah and you, Tom, just wanted to say a big thank you for you coming to spend your morning with me, to spend some time talking about farming for the future and sustainable techniques to farming, all these new innovations coming out of South Africa. And I look forward to having another discussion with you again. Maybe we can chat again in a year, see how it's going, learn more about the disco moths. So to ask you my last question, I'm going to open the floor up. Tom, maybe I'll ask you to answer first and then you, Rushdah. So this is the last question, and this is a stock standard for Earthcast. Everyone has to answer this one. So given your expertise, what question should I have asked you?
Why haven't we opened the Farming for the Future assessments up to everybody and just kept it in-house with Woolworths?
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
I asked myself that question, so it's...
And how do you respond?
I do believe we should, given this last year in particular where we opened up our road shows to everybody and the enthusiasm that was received, I asked myself that same question, that we should actually be, offering it out to other growers, non-Woolworths suppliers. It makes sense. And part of, we're responsible for retail in South Africa for our section, but we're also responsible for making sure that the farming progresses and continues and you leave the land, for your children, as everybody would say, and all that kind of stuff. And it's not just the Woolworths farms, it's actually every farm should be adopting the same approach. So, I do ask myself that question, is why do we limit our program to only Woolworths growers? And we should be opening it up.
Thank you.
What should you have asked me? How do we get our customers to be more accepting of produce that's not just that perfect tomato and perfect carrot?
And there's a ladybird in the bag.
Yes, exactly.
Hyper fresh produce.
How many did you have the other day? It was 3 ladybirds or something like that in a bag.
In our coriander, and I was so happy to see them there.
But the customer wasn't.
Not so much.
And how would you respond to that?
Yeah, so over the years, we've kind of almost conditioned our customers to expect that perfect tomato, that perfect carrot. And educating her with what we are trying to do now and teaching her about farming for the future and what's actually happening on our farms to be able to reduce food waste and help our farmers increase their yields. You know, that carrot and that tomato is still going to give you the best flavor. It might not look perfect, it might have a little blemish on the skin, but if we want to play our part in making our farmers more sustainable, that's something that we really need them to understand.
Thank you so much again for joining me. And thank you for the audience for listening. And join us again for another episode of Farming for the Future, Season 5 on Earthcast.
Thank you very much.
Woo!